everyone. This is going to be a video to go through my genetics packet. It's 6 pages long, front and back 3 pages. So the first page you can see here is just going to be talking about alleles, genotypes, phenotypes, and the terms homozygous and heterozygous. So number 1 asks below, it says below each of the words are choices. Circle the choices that are examples of that word. So example like dominant alleles. You're going to circle the letters are the dominant alleles, like big D. You wouldn't circle little e or little k, but you would circle big L. The recessive alleles, you would circle all the recessive or lowercase letters here. This is for each genotype below, indicate whether it's heterozygous with an HE or homozygous with an HO. So you can see here, this is a big A, so this is homozygous, so you'd write HO, and big E, little e is heterozygous, so you'd write an HE right here. This is pretty easy once you get the hang of it, but remember, big A is homozygous. Also, little b is homozygous. So they're both homozygous. It's just this one's dominant and this one's going to be recessive, but they still are both homozygous. All right, for each of these genes, give the genotype that would be homozygous dominant, it says HD, heterozygous, HE, or homozygous recessive, HR. And you can see they show you here what you're looking to write. So like HD is capital, HE is capital or lowercase, and then the HR here is lowercase. So for like F, it would be big F, then big F, and then little f. This one's going to ask you to state whether the genotypes are homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. And yes, you have to write it out because it's very important you understand that these are homozygous dominant, this is homozygous recessive, and heterozygous. So I just kind of give you the answers there. This one, number 5, asks you to go through and label each of the following as either an allele, a genotype, or a phenotype. So for example, this is a genotype because there's 2 letters. This is an allele because it's 1 letter. And this is a phenotype because it's a physical characteristic. On the back, you're looking at pairing up the genotypes with the phenotypes. And you can see here it says purple flowers are dominant to white flowers. So big P would be purple flowers. Big P, little p, since it has that 1 dominant letter, would also be purple flowers. And then little p would be the white flowers. You can see here it goes purple, white. Same thing for number 7, just in the opposite. So for each of the phenotypes, you have to tell me what the genotypes are. So like for straight hair, you can be big A, because it says straight hair is dominant to curly hair. So straight hair could also be big A, little a, and then curly hair is the only type of genotype that produces curly hair is little a. Number 8 says below each of these words, circle the choices that are examples of that word. It says it's genotypes in which the dominant gene must be shown. So you have big A, you'd circle that one. You'd also circle the ones that are like the big E, little e, because they would also show the dominant phenotype. You would not circle the recessive ones. You don't circle the recessive ones until down here because that's when they are shown or they are produced. Punnett squares. This next section, you can see each of these sections are kind of divided by a bolded title. But this is going through a Punnett square. These are called monohybrid Punnett squares. I start you off by showing you the different, like what I want you to write down is like genotypes, the percent, the phenotypes, and the percent. But you can see here it says a yellow pea plant, big G, little g, is crossed with a yellow pea plant, big G, little g. Yellow plants are dominant to green plants. So in this case, you'd put big G, little g right here. You'd put big G, little g here, and you'd do the cross. So the cross here would produce a big G, a big G, little g, a big G, little g, and a little g, little g. So you would fill this in again, big G, little g, because these are the parents, big G, little g, another parent, and then you just fill in this Punnett square. So then it asks you to identify what the percent of each these genotypes would be in the offspring. This one right here would be 25% because again, this is the only box where you're going to see big G. Big G, little g is going to be 50% because 2 out of the 4 boxes are the big G, little g's. It's this one right here and this one right here. And then little g, this is again 25% because it is only in this box. I always tell the students, think of these as quarters and they equal $1. So each box is a quarter and think about how many cents are in a quarter. It's 25. Phenotypes. Remember, as long as it has 1 big G, it's going to produce the dominant phenotype. So in this case, you have yellow, and green. So 75% of the offspring are going to be yellow, and only 25% of the offspring are going to be green. That's because there's only 25% that are little g. And there are several practice problems you just have to get through with those. So those are all monohybrid, and they just ask you different questions in each. And you can see down here, you have to fill out them yourself, and then that's it. All right, next section. This section is going to be a little bit more difficult. This looks at Mendel's data, And what this shows you, or what this is going to work you through, is what did Mendel see in his experiments, and how can we tell what the parents were based on those crosses? The first one's pretty self-explanatory. It takes you through his work. So I would go through and watch my lecture on the genetics of these Mendel's plants. But each one of these, it gives you like a scenario. It says Mendel crossed a tall pea plant with a tall pea plant. Mendel collected 8,000 offspring. 6,000 of the offspring are tall, while 2,000 of the offspring are short. So if you do the math, 6,000 out of 8,000 were tall. That's about 75%. 2,000 of the 8,000 were short. That's 25%. So what two combinations of parents, we have to think, produce a 75 to 25% offspring? It's also going to ask you what the dominant versus recessive phenotypes are, and then again, what the percent of the dominant and recessive phenotypes in the offspring. And it says, what are the parents? In this case, the parents are going to be like big A, little a, big A, little a, because that's where you get that 3-to-1 ratio of tall to, I think this is the tall to short one. Yep, the tall to short pea plants. And then each one of these questions just asks you, like, it gives you another scenario. You can see this one's 50-50, this one's 100% dwarf, and I think this one's 100% terminal. You have to figure out what the parents are to create those different circumstances in the pea plants. So this is the end of the packet. If you do have questions, send me an email, but this is how you work through that first packet.